the man himself, the legend. Is that him? Wow, Eddie Hearn. Let me stand up here and clap for Eddie Hearn. This is a big deal, Eddie. How are you, sir? Wow, I feel a little starstruck here in front of you, Eddie.
We've never met, right?
We've never met,
Someone said, no, but we've done a few things over Zoom. I feel like we've met, you know?
In the midst of the pandemic, you and Tony, you invited me on your show. It was a big deal. So great to have you here. Thank you for doing this.
Good to be here.
What about this setup we have here? It's pretty cool, right?
It's impressive because I always thought, I wasn't sure how big time you were.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. That's
very nice. But then when I came into your amazing office...
You thought I was just some schlub, right?
Basically.
Wow.
I didn't realise this is a major show. They said to me, you got to do aerial show. I was like...
You said why?
I was like, I spoke to my agent. I said, how big is that? Not really. I haven't really got an agent, by the way.
I know. I'm sure you do.
Yeah, no, I don't. I definitely don't. But no,
thanks for hanging out with Dana a lot.
Bits and pieces. I find him very... I found him very welcoming, and respectful is the wrong word because he doesn't have to be respectful to me. But I treat people... I take people how they come across and how they treat me. And when I went to the UFC Performance Centre, when Daniel Jacobs was training there to fight Canelo, he was actually watching his son on the pads. And he said, look, do you want to have a tour around? He took me over to the new facility at the time, which was being built.
Yeah, the PI.
Yeah, and went out of his way to, and I was quite, I think sometimes people get a bad name, bad rep, but you should always take them on face value. And I found him very welcoming and very
It was
hospitable.
A joke because... He's not the biggest fan of mine, so that's why he thought that I was.
Yeah, I know that. That's why I said he was a nice bloke.
Yeah. Joe, we all good over there? I hear some talking. Everyone good? Okay. So we have a lot to talk about, Eddie. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you taking some time doing some charity media for us here. Before you came in, I said you're the best promoter in combat sports, not just boxing. Okay. I said that before you walked in. Agree or disagree? Right now, you're the best in my opinion.
I think, again, sorry to bring up Dana White. I think he's really good at what he does. I mean, a lot of what we do as a business follows suit from the UFC, and I never mind admitting that I tell our team, watch what they're doing. In terms of everything from the live streams of the press conferences to the graphics to the look and feel, the branding, the ring, everything. So I believe that I'm definitely the best promoter in boxing. But I do think Dana White is a bit of an icon in that respect. And Dana for me, it was never about building my brand or my profile, but I've realised the importance of doing that at the same time. And he has built his brand and profile to a point where it's very powerful when you're promoting to have that kind of platform, because you can't always rely on the power of a broadcaster and the ability of a broadcaster to promote your event. So it's important to build your own platform. And I think what he's done in MMA is very similar to what we want to do in boxing, in many respects, not all respects, but which is domination, global domination, and building a brand to a point where when you go to a new city or a new town or a new country, the credibility of a Matchroom event or an Eddie Hearn event or whatever what you want will almost draw people to that. Not as much as the talent, but that's where they're so strong, is that when UFC comes to London, UFC sells out before you even know who's on.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
The quality of the card, the fight, it's got to stand the test of time.
Right.
But it's building that brand of you just recognise the quality and you recognise that as a great night out.
I see a lot of early Dana White in you. You stick around, you do interviews with everyone, 20 minutes after the press conference. It reminds me a lot, you do the scrums. You talk to everyone, every website, every YouTube channel. So it reminds me a lot of when he was really hungry and pounding the pavement. Now he's kind of won the race. He's a gazillionaire, but I see a lot of that, and that's a compliment, by the way. So much going on in your world. You just came from MSG. You had the historic press conference. Katie Taylor, who I'm a huge fan of, Amanda Serrano, you, Jake Paul up there. How hard was it to get this done? I know you tried to get it done, but it seems, at least from afar, this time around, once Jake and Nikisa and MVP came on board, it seems like it was relatively easy after she won her fight in December. True or false?
Yeah, they raised the VAT. The reason it didn't get made probably 3 years ago was we had a contract actually, but COVID hit, and Amanda never felt that she was truly getting what she deserved for the fight, but that was the value of the fight at the time, and I think when you're negotiating a fight with a fighter, sometimes they forget that model, which is, this is the money generated for the fight, this is your purse. I know there's always the argument across what UFC pays in relation to the revenue of the show versus what boxing pays, but ultimately, in boxing, that's, what's generated is reflected in your purse.
Right.
But that was the interest in the fight at the time. Fast forward 3 years, the way women's boxing has continued to climb, the job that Katie Taylor has done. And now all of a sudden, Jake Paul puts her on his shows, he's championing her value increases, but also within the package of Amanda Serrano, we're getting Jake Paul. So all of a sudden, DAZN are looking at it saying, well, this fight has value because it's a main room, Madison Square Garden, historic event, biggest female fight of all time. Eddie Hearn, Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano, Jake Paul. I see the turnout today. Unbelievable. I've done more media today, but different kind of media than just a standard traditional boxing event. That's because of the whole female aspect. First, females to headline MMA or boxing in 140 years of history at Madison Square Garden, but also because of his involvement. And I promoted his first fight 2 years ago.
Yeah, you were one of the first guys who
I started this mess.
Yeah, you're the reason. We have to blame you.
Yeah.
Is it true they're both making over 7 figures? That's true.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and they deserve it. But Katie messaged me after the Rio Olympics and said, I really believe I can change female professional boxing. I had, no interest. I had no understanding. I didn't feel like there was the commercial interest from broadcasters for women's boxing. But I had to meet her because she's a legend.
Sure.
And she came in and it was just like, I said to her, tell me about your life. What interests you? She said, boxing and God. I'm like, wow, okay, that's deep. And then, but just, she's so driven. And that inspires me. And just being around her for so long, we dreamt of this moment. Serrano was fighting for $500, probably 7, 8 years ago. She's been through the whole system. And now you're seeing female fights, headlining cards everywhere. I mean, again, sorry to go back to UFC, but you've seen over the last few years, that's become a regular theme as major women's events. And now this is taking it to another level at MSG, in the main room. But it's the support of people that feels different. Like MSG, the owners, they're like, this is a great look for us. We should be championing this. You know what I mean? DAZN, sponsors, media. It's just, it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling. And Katie's a legend. She's an icon, and there'll be 50% Irish in there, Puerto Ricans with Amanda. It'd be a really great atmosphere, great card as well. And it feels like a good moment, a historic moment.
Absolutely. When you embraced Jake early on a couple of years ago, did you think it would turn out like this?
No.
I mean, he was.
I put him in against a YouTuber.
Yeah.
And the best way I can describe Jake is like people say to me, "Do you like Jake Paul?" And I say, Jake. The terminology is different in the UK and
grade A plunker, I've heard.
Plonker,
yeah,
grade A plonker, dipstick, But I like him, and I think I don't mean that almost disrespectfully in a way. Like I think you could half the time I think he's on a wind up. Do you know what I mean? And half the time, like we were doing a media scrum today, and he was talking about fighting Canelo, and like I'm looking at him going, "Are you just laughing inside, or do you?" And I think it's a little bit of both. Do you know what I mean? And I think fighters, because of what they've sacrificed, sometimes hold it against Jake Paul and say, like, well, I've been grinding in the gym for 15 years. It's like, yeah, but you're not good enough. And you haven't built the profile that he's built. Why shouldn't he be allowed to do that? He's putting the work in the gym. He's fallen in love with the sport, genuinely. And that's easy to do. We've all done it. You've done it. I've done it. And I think he's good for boxing. I think he brings a different kind of audience. I think he's not everybody's cup of tea, but you can't start arguing with him. I mean, as Dana's found out, I mean, that diss track is outrageous, But
what did you think of it?
I thought it was really good.
You thought it was good?
Yeah.
Catchy?
I mean, I'm again, go back to, I like both guys, so I'm like, but I did watch it and go, almost like, what time's the legal letter coming?
Right, exactly.
But it's kind of good in that you can never take life too seriously. But in that instance, I say they're both good for each other. Do you know what I mean? Like Dana would have been fuming. He should never have gone back to Jake Paul anyway. It's the last thing you do.
Right.
Is do a video addressing Jake Paul. Like, just don't do it. Just leave it. Just go, no. But then, isn't it what we want? We want views, we want interest, we want drama, we want confrontation, we want hype, we want narrative. That's our jobs, isn't it? So I think that they complement each other in that respect.
He's been talking a lot about fighter pay. It's crazy because he actually talks more about the issues in MMA than in boxing in terms of the pay. I don't know how much you pay attention. You're very busy. But do you look at what's going on in MMA right now. It's a huge topic, fighter pay. For example, there was this purse bid, which I will ask you about in a moment, and the numbers come out, right? Tyson Fury, 32 million. Dillian White, 8 million, give or take, right? The heavyweight champion of the UFC 2 weeks ago, Francis Ngannou, I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yeah, of course.
600,000. I mean, this is an issue, right?
Yeah.
Can you say this is an issue?
But that's also the number that's on the bout agreement with the State Commission. Sometimes there's
but it's also what the number he told me.
I'll tell you a funny story about Francis Ngannou.
Please.
Have I ever told you this?
I don't know.
So during the pandemic, when you did our show,
Yeah.
right, I was doing loads of stuff on Zoom, just trying to create content. And I read that Francis Ngannou wanted to be a boxer, right, and was interested in fighting. So I got in touch with his team because he'd had a little bit of beef with Dillian White, nothing major. And I got in touch with his team. I said, look, let's do a Zoom, you, me, and Dillian White, right, just bored. So they've agreed to it. Next thing, I'm on a Zoom with Dillian White and Francis Ngannou, basically going at it, right? I'll knock you out, I'll do it, you know, he's all hyper, blah, blah, blah. Then, word has got to the UFC that I've done, ultimately, a press conference to promote a fight. But I wasn't even thinking, Ariel, you know, and then Dana messaged me and said, what are you doing? And I'm like, what? And he said, you've done a press conference with Francis Ngannou and Dillian White. I'm like, well, it wasn't really a press conference, it was just a Zoom. It was, and then I thought, then I got a legal letter from the UFC to say, like, you can't be putting this out. They were 1,000,000% right. Okay. But, you know, at the time I was thinking, this is massive. You know, and I still think Francis Ngannou, Tyson Fury, Francis Ngannou, AJ, didn't know, there's huge, huge fights. So I think that fighter power has drifted down the UFC probably a little bit slower than it did in boxing. It's very old promoters, you know, every fighter that I represent is my boss. Whether they're a kid debuting in their first fight at 19, I work for the fighter. That's my mentality. The old school, they couldn't say it. You know, if you said to Bob Arum, tell me that Terence Crawford's your boss. Go on, say it, Bob. Oh, I can't. You know, he couldn't say it. So fighter power in boxing, you know, for a while now, they've become the boss. They've become, you know, in control of their own destiny. For UFC, where they've been very smart is it's such an honour to get a UFC deal. You know, you see these kids coming out of Bellator or Cage Warriors or wherever it is, like the thought of getting a UFC contract is everything. But I feel in UFC, they don't want you to get too big, you know, and when you do, I mean, I used to almost laugh at Conor because I could just imagine just the disruption that he was causing in that organisation, because that's not really the name of the game. We don't want a star that is bigger than the UFC. Conor McGregor became bigger than the UFC, really. And that's a nightmare for those guys. The one thing I will say is, and I think is you know, certainly their margins are very favourable to the organisation over the fighters, but they do, you know, when you go to the Institute and stuff like that, there is parts and benefits of being involved with the organisation that maybe you don't see. It's a very powerful business. In boxing, we work with our bigger fighters really on an 80-20 split. It sounds like theirs is closer to the other way in terms of revenue.
To be clear, that's 20 for you, 80 for them.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Just because that number would shock MMA fans.
Yeah, but also that 20 becomes smaller and smaller as the fighter gets bigger and bigger.
Right.
Because ultimately, how can you justify, you know, if a fighter's making 50 million, you make 10 million on one fight? It's a lot of money. You know, this guy is the one putting their health on the line, their life on the line to go in there, but it's a historic model that I guess will change, and there'll be more pressure on the organisation as time goes by to adjust that, especially with the voice and noise of someone like Jake Paul. Jake Paul's a disaster for those guys. Do you know what I mean?
Do you think he's sincere about this?
Yeah, but I also think he's got a bee in his bonnet and he's having fun with it, and I think he's on a mission. But yeah, do I think he feels that UFC fighters are underpaid? Yeah, for sure.
Do you think they're underpaid?
Yeah, if the split of revenue is, you know, skewed more towards the other way, yeah, I do.
Does it surprise you they've gotten away with this for so long? I mean, they're almost 30 years old at this point, and really not a lot has changed.
When you create, you know, don't forget that the fighter the representation that fighter has, it's their responsibility to put the best deal together possible. What surprised me is the length of time they've been able to manage individuals as they've grown. So like Conor was a good example. I always thought Conor would just walk away from the UFC, start up his own promotional arm of MMA, you know. And it's very interesting. I'd love to see the ins and outs behind the scenes of how that relationship was managed with Conor. You know, reports of when he boxed Mayweather, they went 50-50 on the purse, UFC and Conor. That's outrageous. Like, but it
should be more, you're saying, for Conor, right?
Oh, of course. Yeah. But at the same time, I understand he's in contract and you're not allowed to take that fight. So to do that, that's the deal. It all comes down to the deal. But it's, I go back to the beauty of the UFC, which is to join the UFC is a dream. And when it's a dream, ultimately, you're going to get a great deal. And I think a lot of these early deals look great for a MMA fighter. It's only when they become a sizable draw that changes. Like Francis Ngannou now, you'll know better than me. Does he have another fight on his contract? They're saying
He's done, but he has this champions clause that he has to stick around for a year from this point till the end of 2022 because he's a champion. If he would have lost that fight 2 weeks ago, he would have been a free man. So you got this champions clause. You also have this thing, if you get injured or you turn down a fight, they'll add 6 months to your contract. They'll just add it, keep adding six.
They might add it through COVID. I mean, there's all kinds of extensions. But ultimately now, during that period, the pressure's on the UFC to go to Francis Ngannou and do a new deal. And they'll significantly overpay him from where he was at. But it comes down to the sort of feeling of the fighter to say, I don't want to, you know, I feel like I've been almost mistreated, so I don't want to be here anymore. But I would be shocked if they didn't do a new deal with Francis Ngannou. I would say it's on almost certainty that they will, the time it all plays out, you know?
So last Friday, the big news about the purse bid, right? Dillian Whyte, Tyson Fury. Were you surprised that Matchroom lost?
No, because when you've got the lion's share of the bid, and what I mean by that is Tyson Fury was on 80%, which is being disputed, you can manipulate the bid. So what you do is you say to Tyson Fury, look, before I bid, are you happy with $25 million? Because we don't want to lose control of this fight, Tyson. You know, we don't want it on a Eddie Hearn promotion, could put it anywhere, blah, blah, blah. So are you happy? And there might be a minimum, a number in his contract even for the fight. Yes. Okay, all of a sudden you know that whatever you bid, you're only paying Tyson Fury $25 million. So the overbid beyond that number is just to Dillian Whyte by 20%. So the bid of 41 million was not 41 million, unless they want to come out and prove me wrong. And by the way, it's not illegal. I've done it before. It's just part of the process of a purse bid. So we bid 32 or 33. They bid 41. And probably they bid closer to our number, really. Like, it's very simple maths. Do you know what I mean? We all know what we're doing. We know the exact money to a couple of $1 million that will be generated from that fight. And it's not 41, but it's around 30.
Do you wish you would have gone a little bit more aggressive?
Not really, because we would have lost a lot of money.
That would have been a huge disruption, though. Could you imagine?
Yeah, but he probably wouldn't have taken the fight. I mean, Tyson Fury, who, you know, we don't get on all the time. I do have a lot of respect for. I mean, you never know what you're going to get, you know, and yeah, of course, would I have liked to promote the fight? Yeah, of course, I can't lie, but I'm happy. Sometimes in that situation, you put a number in, it's like buying a house, Ariel. You know, are you prepared to lose the house? Yeah, I am at that number. And that's exactly the same for that purse bid. So do you want to win this bid? Yeah, I do. But you got to make a bid that if you lose, no problem. And that's where we're at.
How close were we to getting the Usyk and Fury fight? I've heard you say that Fury bottled it, that he didn't really want it.
Bottle it. He changed, the goalpost changed. You know, I had to go and negotiate with AJ to step aside.
And he was in?
He never wanted to do.
Okay.
Then it got to a point where I said to him, look, the money's good, you can have a warm-up fight with a new trainer, and you can fight the winner for 3 times more than you're supposed to get to fight Usyk, right? So logically, this could make sense. But when you've got a lot of money and you're a principles guy like AJ, he's saying, I have to walk down the street knowing that I've stepped aside. I don't want to step aside. Anyway, cut a long story short, the plan was Fury fights Usyk and AJ fights the winner. Nice and simple. And then all of a sudden, Fury said, I'm not willing to fight Usyk. I want to warm up first. And we're saying, well, hang on, I don't even trust Fury to fight AJ after Usyk. Now I've got to trust Fury to have a warm up, then fight Usyk, then fight AJ. So we were renegotiating the deal, etc. And then Fury just said, I want to go ahead with a Dillian Whyte fight. So I'm glad in a way, because the whole thing was a bit of a mess. And we didn't approach anyone step aside. We were approached with this model. And I was willing to entertain it, but it got to a point where it was like, if he's not prepared to fight Usyk, and then you go on social media, and you see Fury, who's brilliant, brilliant entertainment. Usyk, you bum, you're an easy fight. I'll get the belts back for England, and then the next thing you're being told he won't fight Usyk. So it's like, it's quite confusing, the whole thing. So now he fights Dillian Whyte.
And now he's saying Dillian has gone quiet. Like, do you think this fight even happens?
Yeah. They said I saw an article the other day from Keith Hyde. It's like, Dillian Whyte has till February 21st to sign the contract. It's like, both guys do. That's the condition of the purse bid.
Right.
As of this morning, we haven't received a contract. Now, that's not unusual, but at the moment, we don't have the contract from the purse bid. They also have 10 days to pay the deposit, which is 4.1 million. They haven't paid the deposit yet. I'm sure they will, but it's like a process that you go through. Someone said to me, you've gone really quiet about this Fury Whyte fight. I'm like, well, I lost the purse bid. It's not my fight.
Right.
I'm not out here to hype the fight up. I'm out here to support Dillian Whyte. So, yeah, I think...
But is he going to take it?
Dillian?
Yeah.
For sure.
Why has he been so quiet?
He's not... He's just not come out. I mean, he's reposted a couple of things, but he's just chilled and training. I don't think he wants to play... I think there's a way to deal with Fury. Do you know what I mean? And I think sometimes going on the quiet side, personally, is a decent... So like, do you really want to get in a slagging match with Tyson Fury and use all that energy? Like, do your work, do your training, and go and try and knock him out. So this is a shot he's been waiting for a long time. It's not, there's no conversations going on with us now going, oh, should we look in another direction? There's no other direction. This is the fight. So
you've had a lot of W's recently over the last couple of years. Like, did it hurt the soul to lose that one to those guys because of the rivalry? No?
Because it's business. And you can't, the minute you start acting on ego is the moment you make a catastrophic error that could cost you millions and millions and millions of dollars. And I don't play that game. I back our guys, but to a point where we understand the numbers and we understand the business. And it's not, if you start going in with your dick, and next thing you're bidding 10 million over the number because I want to win this, I don't like those guys. And then you finish the show and you look at the bottom line and you've done $5-10 million. Oh, well done. That's great business, So we have a great business. We back our guys. And the fact that we were even there meant that Dillian Whyte received that money because we turned up and they went, shit, Matchroom are here. If we didn't turn up, they would have bid $5 million, $10 million because they would have been the only bidder. There's a lot of people there who like to get involved. People phone up Dillian Whyte. Oh, we do this. Then it comes around to it, 2 bidders.
Right.
All these other people that were so interested in the fight, where were they putting their money up? Because they ain't got no money. That's the difference.
By the way, I don't know why no one does this. Someone needs to televise the person.
Oh, no, yeah.
It's a fascinating piece of
With some
theater.
governing bodies, you have to deposit 10% of the bid with the bid. Which is
you can make a show out of this, like the Champions League. Where you open up the envelope. Yes.
The Draft is one of the biggest shows,
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know why. DAZN, ESPN Plus, someone needs to televise this because we're just all refreshing.
It's weird. It's a horrible process because not in a non-COVID world, everyone flies to Mexico or your representative. You'll go into a room with your envelope. You put the envelope in the middle and you'll sit back and they open them and they read them out. Now you're on Zoom. You've got to send your offer in 5 minutes before a purse bid, which I don't really like anyway.
Right.
I think it's, and then you're sitting there on Zoom waiting for them to open up the emails and go through. So in person, it's a lot of fun.
Oh, it's great theater. We're short on time here. You're very busy. I think you told your PR guy, you're like, why am I coming here? Give me 30 minutes.
Oh, now I'm enjoying it now.
Now it's a good time. Can you tell him we need more time?
What's the time now?
It's 3 o'clock. They said 3:05.
Yeah, we can do another 10 minutes.
Yeah? Okay, great. AJ Usyk. Does it happen in May?
Yeah, I think, again,
100%?
Again, there's nothing else. The only thing that I was looking at, because it was a lot of money on the table, was this other deal,
Right.
But there's no other fight. Again, that's the fight, and that's the fight AJ wanted. He will make changes to his training team. But when I sat down with him last Monday about the step aside, He just said, I'll beat Usyk. I said, yeah, but you haven't started working with your new trainer yet. I said, I'll beat him without a trainer. He's pumped for that fight. And it's a really tough fight. And by the way, Fury's no mug. He knows how good Usyk is. That's why he didn't want to fight him straight off the bat. He's really good. So it's a tough fight for AJ. I just hope AJ gets the credit for the fights that he takes. Like, how many fighters, honestly, would have just taken the Usyk fight in AJ's position, or how many would have just vacated the belt and gone, oh no, we're going down another route? He wanted to fight him, and now he's fighting him again, straight off the bat. So May time for that fight, looking to secure the venue, I think, back in the UK.
I saw that you had dinner with Devin Haney last night. Is that the fight that's going to happen? Devin Haney, George Kambosos?
It's the fight. I mean, you've got the whole debacle about, who's undisputed, who's the champion. The only way we can solve that is those two fighting each other. Natural fight. Devin's agreed to go to Australia for that fight, into the backyard of George Kambosos. Got to make it happen. Love George. Great guy. Brilliant win against Teofimo at the Garden. And he wants his night in Australia. And
he's kind of a free agent, though, now, right?
He's with Lou DiBella. Yeah, he's like a network free agent.
Right.
Yeah, so...
How tricky is it to get that fight now?
I mean, there's two fights for him. There's the Lomachenko fight with ESPN, and there's the Haney fight with DAZN. I think they'll think Haney might be more beatable than Lomachenko. And he's got that belt, the one that will answer the questions about undisputed. So George has no fear. George will fight any of those guys. And hopefully Devin Haney gets the call, because then we can have one clear champion in the division. And I think one of the great things about women's boxing is that we're starting to see so many undisputed champions now. How good is it to have one champion in the division that you can say he's the best in the division?
Time frame?
May, I think, again, for Haney against Kambosos. Wow. I mean, the numbers are starting to pick up, or have been, for COVID in Australia. So it's kind of put April out of the equation. But, I think May time, Devin's here last night. He's 23 years old. He can really fight. I think this kid's a real young superstar, so he's ready.
Do you have any interest in Terence Crawford?
Yes, because he's a pound-for-pound top fighter. Goes back to the value of a fight. Have you
talked to him?
Yeah, I've had some chats with his representatives. The problem is what can we deliver in that weight class for him? It's a weight class historically dominated by PBC. So it's one thing getting Terence Crawford and paying him great money, but the other one is which fight are you going to give him that's actually going to deliver for DAZN? And we don't have access to a lot of those welterweights that would deliver value. Errol Spence, greatest example. And again, it comes back to how much money is Terence Crawford going to generate? Amazing fighter, but I just feel that promotionally, they haven't done the job that perhaps could have been done on Terence Crawford to make him the draw that he should be. Okay.
So do you think that it's worth it for you, or you're not interested? Like, are you?
I'm interested because he's a great fighter.
Right.
But I think we will struggle to deliver the numbers that he would want, unless he was so sensible. Like, my idea of sensible might be ludicrous to, Adrian Broner,
right,
for example. Is a good example of but that doesn't mean we're always right, but we know the numbers. This is the difference. We know the numbers, but fighters and their representatives don't really care what the numbers is. They've got their own numbers.
So at this point, you and Canelo, where do you stand?
I was with him the other day in San Diego. This is the moment now where he'll field all the offers from everybody. Might be Charlo from the PBC, could be Beterbiev from Top Rank from us, could be Bivol and Golovkin, which are two great fights. It really comes down to money, of course, but also what him and Eddie Reynoso fancy, what they like. They've got everything. They've got all the money, they've got all the legacy, they've got all the belts. Canelo lives for the challenge, and it'll just come down to the fight that he likes. I think the Golovkin fight is arguably still the biggest in boxing. It's the trilogy for the Undisputed Championship. Bivol is a great fight at 175 if he wants to move up and try and become undisputed at light heavyweight. Charlo is another good fight. Benavidez, there's loads of fights, but he's earned the right to call the shots. And for me, it's just a dream working with him, because I hate to sound like a fanboy, but he is the coolest guy I've ever met. He genuinely, the belief, Ariel, of this man. You talk to him about a fight, I might have said to him when we did the Callum Smith fight or Billy Joe Saunders fight, Callum's a big 168. Billy Joe Saunders, he can move well. It's just like the mindset of a fighter is when you're around someone like Canelo, you start to realise the importance of confidence and mindset of a fighter. He thinks he's completely unbeatable, and he thinks he can beat Usyk. I mean, I guess he probably thinks he could beat AJ. Like that's just his mentality, and he's so good. Arguably the best fighter I've ever seen up close, but even across the generations. I mean, so when I got to work with him, we did Saunders, broke the record, the indoor attendance, a record in Dallas. Like it was a dream come true, really. But like I said, you don't want to sound too much like a fanboy. Sure. If we can get his signature for another couple of fights, I'd be over the moon.
I love the history of combat sports, promotions, promoters. Like I'm fascinated by this. And like I said, I hold you in very high regard. Before I let you go, I want to throw a couple names your way, and you tell me what comes to mind, okay?
Yeah, I like this guy.
Don King.
One of the great promoters of all time. I mean, look, the history, the prison sentence, this is stuff that we never agree with, and I'm sure there was plenty happening on the unethical side. But when there was a show, a Don King show in town, you knew about it. So, and that's the essence of great promoting. You have to be a showman. Sometimes people criticise me, it's all about Eddie Hearn. He's up there. So, well, that's my job.
Right.
I have to be loud. I have to be arrogant. I have to be, go out there and make noise. But Don King was arguably the greatest at doing that. With the flags and sometimes the speaker going around, and unfortunately, there were many parts that you wouldn't want to replicate. But as a pure promoter, arguably one of the greatest of all time.
Al Heyman?
Clever, obviously. I mean, it still baffles me the way he can gain. I got another funny story about Al Heyman. So James DeGale, who's our super middleweight, we represented him. He signed with Al Heyman. And after his fight, when he defended his world title, one of the guys came in the room with a phone and said to James, Al's on the phone. And James went, is he? Sure. So he took the phone, went into the toilet, came out, and he was like, Al said I box really well. I'm like, how do you even know it was Al? Do you know what I mean? But that's like, that's so powerful.
Right.
That, bear in mind, this guy doesn't speak at press conferences.
Yeah, no.
He doesn't go to the show. He just sits in his house, does his business. But that reputation of Al, it's very smart. And the guy is obviously super smart guy. He's been in music. We're like, I don't think I'm his biggest fan, which is fine. But I do respect him as a businessman. Just Al's problem is he doesn't like promoters, and that's what kills him in the PBC, because there is no promoter. He'll use some sort of smaller guys who are good guys as well, but there's no, at the press conferences,
you need that guy up there.
It's a journalist asking questions, and he's afraid to give that power, if you like, to one person. But clearly has a great business in the PBC.
Bob Arum?
I mean, I have a huge amount of respect for Bob Arum because he's 90 years old.
Yeah.
I'll put this on record now. If I'm sitting here at 60, shoot me now, right? Because I'm out at 50, right? Like, this is a terrible business to be in. Like, there's sleepless nights, you're up on different time zones, arguments, people trying to fuck you, but he clearly loves it. So I have to give him unbelievable respect at 90, that he's still there going to the shows with the passion that he has. But you can't be 90 and understand the audience.
Right.
That's a big thing. And some of the things that he says about women's boxing the other day, about Terence Crawford while he's live on air, talking about this fighter has no value. Bobby's refreshingly honest, right? But unfortunately, it's not for now. And my dad's of that same mold. My dad's 74 years old. I listen to him sometimes and think, You know, it's just the world's changed. How do you interact with the audience? You need to create an event where the younger generation are excited to attend. I remember once, before we finish, I was in, I think I've told you this before, I went to, Daniel Jacobs was fighting actually against Dimitri Pirog, Friday night, Mandalay Bay, right? And on the Saturday night was Lesnar against Darwin or whatever his name was, right? That was on the Saturday.
Yeah.
I went on the Friday night, it was half empty, people were like asleep in the crowd with like a popcorn like this, like t-shirt, whatever. The Saturday night I went to the UFC event, I couldn't believe it. People were dressed up, they were drinking champagne, vodka Red Bull. The vibe was totally different. You need to be attractive to that younger generation. And that's what we've done in the UK really well. We've created an experience for a night out. It's a night out.
Yeah.
Bob can't do that. He doesn't understand what young people want in a night out. You know, he may go, oh, shut up, what are you talking about? No, but we know. Because I'm the market. I'm the target market. I'm him. Do you know what I mean? So Bob, like what he's achieved, we did a speech once around the fight. And I was saying, you know, I did Joshua against Klitschko, 90,000 at Wembley. That was a big moment for me, blah, blah. And then Bob went, yeah, when I did the Rumble in the jungle with Ali and Foreman, I was like, and the Thriller in Manila. I mean, he's a legend.
Right.
He's a legend. And you have to respect him. But it's time, you know.
Last one in a word, Frank Warren. What comes?
Never really met him. You know, again, like the rivalry between my dad and him. Like again, like Don King, you know, there's lots that you have to respect him for. You know, apparently he's a very nice guy socially, but there's a lot that I can't respect him for. Right. But no one's perfect. The difference is between those guys. Like my dad said to me the other day, oh, if you were around when I was promoting, I couldn't stand you. You know what I mean? And I guess that's how they look at me, and I don't even hold it against them. I'd hate me if I was them, because I was the young kid who came in and turned the system over in the UK. Warren done it once.
Yeah.
He came in and overturned the old system, and now it's happened to him. So
you got the rivalries with the likes of Leonard Ellerby, you guys going back.
Yeah, Leonard, I mean, but rivalry's a good area.
No, it's good, like, listen.
And also, it makes me hungry, because what you talked about earlier about Dana, you know, say, oh, that's what he used to do, probably lost it. I'm hungry.
Yeah, no, it comes
because I ain't
across.
letting these people win. That's the difference. And actually, the worst thing they could do is bark back at me, or bark at me at all. Because I look at it and I go, right, okay, that's just giving me another spring in my step. You know, the day you sit back on your laurels and say, getting a bit tired, you know, I don't really fancy this anymore, you're done. But these people keep me on my toes because they want to bury me, they want to finish me, and it ain't happening. So there we are.
Your guy's going to kill me, but I have to ask, would you ever do MMA? Would you ever get into the MMA world?
I've looked at it a few times. I mean,
Come on, Eddie, do it. Get in there. Shake things up, baby.
I guess there's a lot of people. It only takes 2 or 3.
Do it.
Talent.
Yeah.
You know, all of a sudden, you imagine that you came out and you launched a new MMA company and I signed Francis Ngannou.
Let's go.
And I don't know. You know more than me.
I can see the headline. Eddie Hearn wants to sign Francis Ngannou to his MMA promotion.
There you go. Just to say that, I want to speak to my lawyers first.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think you could shake it up.
It's all down to talent. You can't. I don't want to operate in MMA at a lower level. If I go into MMA, I'm taking on the UFC. And I don't really want to take on the UFC because they're very good, they're very powerful, and I've got enough on my plate in boxing.
Okay.
But it's only down to talent. All of a sudden, it can happen very quickly. It's what happened to me in boxing. I signed Carl Froch, Darren Barker, Kell Brook in a week. Next thing, I've got the exclusive contract with Sky. I've got, you know, and that could be the same with MMA. You never know. Sleep with one eye open.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it very much. This was a huge honor for us to have you, and I know your guy's going to get really mad at me. Joe's going to walk you out. Congrats on all you've done, and congrats on getting the fight, Taylor Serrano. And say hello to the New York Stock Exchange for us, okay, Eddie?
Mate.
God bless. There he is, Eddie Hearn joining us, the head man over at Matchroom Boxing. I kept him a little long. I'm sorry, Fred. I'm sorry. I had to ask him more questions.